mentioned earlier, you have been with us for 4 years. You started out during the beginning of the pandemic lockdown. How has how have you noticed religious education here at Fourth U changing during the 4 years, especially after the pandemic lockdown?
Well, in the interest of time, I won't give you the 45-minute answer to that question. In fact, I made notes specifically to avoid keeping myself on topic for some of these. But it really has been a strange 4 years. When I accepted this position, when I had my first interview for this position, actually, it was the week after the congregation had decided to go online. When I accepted the position, the congregation was in what was at that time on every newspaper the center of the pandemic. So I was accepting to move into what all of my friends were like, Ember, like what are you thinking? You're moving to possibly the worst place right now. So it was quite the strange setting to come into. And then since then, it was COVID the first year, Omicron the second year, sabbatical the third year, interim the fourth year. It's been some interesting 4 years here. So that's been strange. But some of the things that I've really noticed changing, that even as I've entered into the world of working at the UUA and having conversations with other DREs over the last few years, is that we have seen a lot of shifts. And the two that I would specifically note to answer this question is that our congregation and congregations throughout the UUA have seen that families have changed their priorities. I think that pre-COVID, that folks going to church on a Sunday was got to check that off the checklist. There's a reason why many families have a kid and suddenly decide to start going back to church. Like, that's a very typical family pattern. But I think COVID disrupted that, and that folks just decided that's not really my priority. As people's lives got busy again coming out of COVID, where they maybe picked up some new hobbies, some new interests, some new things to do on Sundays, that people just didn't come back to having religious community time on a Sunday as a key part of their life experience. And I think that has been particularly felt in New York City, where we do lead exceptionally busy lives as folks. But on the positive side, I think having worked with youth on both sides of the COVID pandemic, that I see even more of a deep desire for connecting with other youth, connecting with what's going on in the world, and really like searching for meaning amongst the youth. That there's I think that the youth who lived through this experience of COVID, that they really came out evaluating what's important in their lives. And I think we're seeing that play out.
Thank you. You alluded to it a little earlier, but the landscape within the religious education world has really been changing even before the pandemic hit. So I remember my former colleague at the UUA, Kim Sweeney, writing an article called The Death of Sunday School, which on the offset sounds very alarming, especially since Unitarians were key and instrumental to starting this whole concept of Sunday school back in the 19th century. And to what does it mean even to, what next? Is it going to be resurrected, or is there going to be a new way for our children to learn about their religious life and their faith?
Right. No, I think even in my youth work and my religious education work prior to COVID was already this death of Sunday school happening, that we were seeing this idea of let's send the kids off to a class so that the parents can enjoy service was kind of fading from popularity, that kids weren't coming, they wanted to just stay home. And so there was already a movement kind of happening, and once again, COVID kind of just sped things up a little bit. And in our UUA ecosystem, the association's ecosystem, there were a lot of systems. We had cons, which were like a really popular weekend get-together for a lot of youth-age students, and these got shut down by COVID, but they had been kind of a place where youth leadership could kind of naturally develop. And so this whole system, kind of a funnel for having leaders who then became young adult leaders, just collapsed for a few years. And we're still really rebuilding that as a whole association. And I think that we're also seeing with this death of Sunday school, the UUA, as something that we've talked about with the values change that we're considering in the Article 2 considerations at General Assembly, that the UUA is leaning into this covenantal living, thinking less of a libertarian faith of whatever we say goes, but instead how can we care for each other in community? And I think that we're seeing that reflected in our work with young people. I think that DREs and similar religious education professionals are often the ones that are trying out new ideas. They're often the ones that have to think about inclusivity first and think about how to model programs to be more welcoming of kids' different learning styles, things that then slowly work their way up through the whole association. Especially that, like the thinking about inclusivity, a lot of our DREs this year, they invented JetPig, which has not been something that I have embraced. But people have dressed up as a pig with a jetpack because this is representing the new 6 values: the justice, equity, transformation, pluralism, inclusivity, and generosity, which I will admit that it helps me remember the list.
You know what? I made that mistake too. It's actually not inclusivity, it's interdependence.
Interdependence.
Yeah, I should check the signature of my email a lot more often, right?
Interdependently yours.
Yes.
Yes. But so I think, we see the DREs having to be the ones that are facing this reality first, facing the changing face of our youth. How do we include trans youth? How do we include neurodiverse youth? And that is then shaping the rest of the association's work as well.
And so can you tell me a little bit more then about how, instead of just siloing this experience to 1 day a week, even 1 hour a week, right, which is Sunday, how do we promote a week-long kind of faith experience? And I know one of the benefits of when we did OWL back in Honolulu was that the parents also participated in that, so that the most important part of the curriculum actually wasn't that 2 or 3 hours that they spent together, but the ride on the way home. Because then the parents had ownership over the conversations and that dialogue of what does faith mean to you? What does human sexuality, in the case of Our Whole Lives, mean to you? So how do we take religious education back as a homework assignment for the whole week instead of just on 1 hour a week?
No, I think this is part of a broader movement that is happening in UUA circles towards whole life RE, thinking about RE as lifespan, which hence the addition to Zach's title, and thinking about how youth and our young people are involved in all of the life of our congregation and not just in that 1 hour. This is something that lots of DREs are thinking about ways to do. And I think it's a reason why, in particular, I've been really passionate about like the multi-generational services. We had, it was a little bit of we were unsure when we thought about it with the Memorial Sunday where we decided to keep the young people in that. And it ended up being really meaningful for them to have that chance to do some grieving as well. And I think that it's important for us to recognize and see our young people as not just something that we have to take care of during the community, but an integral part of the life of our community. And so I think that that's kind of the beginner attitude that moves us towards this whole life and whole congregation and whole week approach. And one of my big takeaways, and as I've been training with Zach, that I talked about is that for the most part, our young people and young people across the country really just want to know that people care. And I think the thing is that also applies to our adults. We can have the fanciest programs, we can pay for the coolest curriculums, we can have the perfect social media posts, but what we really want is people to show up and to model that they really truly care, that there is investment in our young people's lives, investment in each other's lives, and that's really vital to that whole week-long investment in each other. And I think it's really great that you mentioned OWL, because I actually put this in my notes, was we just offered 2 sessions of the parents and guardians as sexuality educators as kind of a precursor to starting to build the momentum for launching OWL programming here. And Zach and I have had plenty of conversations about that as well. But this was thinking about how do our parents hold space for having those discussions about sexuality. And one of the analogies was actually a really great one. It talked about not using the baseball base analogy of first base, second base, home run for talking about sexuality, but instead switching to talking about pizza. So now you can never look at pizza the same. But the way that this was thinking about that when you order pizza as either 2 people or as a group, that you need to discuss together what your expectations are. What are the toppings that you want on the pizza? You need to have consent that you all want the pizza in the first place. Are there any sides that you need? So it's this really great analogy that I could probably stretch for 20 whole minutes. But as teacher Deb and I were putting these lessons together, I was just thinking about how OWL is healthy both for our young people, but it's healthy for the whole community, because we all benefit when we discuss things more openly. We all benefit when we're discussing our intentions openly with one another. We all benefit when we practice consent and understand each other's autonomy and respect each other as whole human beings. So I think that a lot of this whole week RE is switching some of these values and seeing what it means to be with each other in our lives and in our journeys.
Or you may not want pizza at all and be asexual, right?
It's true, and some of us are gluten and dairy free, so.
There you go. And so can you tell me a little bit more about what your greatest lesson has been the past 4 years? Reverend Chris Bice was talking about gem mining. What were some of the mistakes that you made that could be mined as gems?
No, I think that my biggest lesson as I pondered this one, because we know I don't make mistakes, so luckily just could skip that part of the question. But my biggest lesson, I think, was around handling and holding and being pastoral through change. Because, like I said at the beginning, these 4 years have been enormously change-centered in both this congregation and in our wider world. In fact, when I was interviewing for the UUA position, one of the questions was about, what do you do when you're in a situation with a lot of change? And one of the people on my interview committee knew Fourth Universalist, and was like, I have some ideas, Ember, but would you like to elaborate them for the rest of the committee? Because they understood that it had been a time of immense change here at Fourth U. So in handling change, I learned that it's important to think about how you can adapt to rapidly changing circumstances. What is essential, in the same sense of this gem mining, what is the thing that I can sift out and figure out what the gem is at the middle? And I also learned that it was really important to let things fail, that if something falls through, that is a moment to realize where there's something not working in the system, where things need to heal, where there's growth that could be happening, and that the pressure should never be on one person on the team or one person in our congregation to be doing all of the things and fix all of the things, but that letting things fail, in fact, lets the stress out of the system a little bit. And then in the need for boundaries and realistic expectations, and I think that this actually relates a little bit to, I do have my biggest mistake, but with the setting realistic expectations, when I started this position during COVID, I was brand new to the area, was not going out anywhere because of COVID, and so I tossed pretty much my entire life into the work I was doing. This is a 30-hour position, and I can accurately say that with my bad boundaries of that first year, that I was not doing 30-hour weeks. These were just whole days where all I was thinking about was religious education because I didn't really have anything else to do. So when we shifted into our second year, and I not only needed to keep up that same level of quality and quantity, but then do it for both in-person and online, I suddenly found myself just completely overwhelmed and burned out. And so that was a really big reality check on setting realistic expectations of what I can achieve in this position, but also having good professional boundaries of being honest and sticking with my 30 hours. So that was kind of like all around the adapting to change, which I think is the biggest thing that I've mined. But my biggest mistake relates to that second year is that I had heard about the Soul Matters curriculum. It's very widely regarded, and I liked it. It looked very promising, and we spent a good bit of money. It is an expensive curriculum in the UUA, and it's well respected, and it's meant to like incorporate with the whole congregation. It has stuff that the minister can use for readings to like kind of make it a whole congregation experience. But we just grabbed the lessons, and at the same time, we were also really anxious returning from COVID, and so we were, trying to figure out how to do that. Do we, what's our policy when the teachers test positive? How many weeks do they have to be out? We were dealing with so many things, and there was so much stress in the system at that moment that we came in with all of these huge expectations, and we had this fancy curriculum, but it just didn't resonate with the kids because, for the most part, it amounted to, let's read a story, talk about it, and that was pretty much it. And it just wasn't resonating. So the lesson that I took away was that we didn't need the fanciest curriculum, that we could just have a simple curriculum that focused on engaging our young people in the meaning of their lives, which is the next year we then did the superhero curriculum, and then this year we did the role-playing curriculum, and they've given more grounding to the interactions and less grounding to let's pile some knowledge onto you. And so I'm thankful for that lesson of pointing me towards simpler curriculum and focusing on connection instead of trying to figure out how to do all of the things as we return from COVID and also have the perfect curriculum that is the most widely regarded but wasn't resonating with our young people.
Great, thank you. And what advice would you give your successor, Zach? I know you've been training with him for 2 weeks now, and we're glad for this period of overlap.
3? I don't know.
Has it been more than 2 weeks? All right, somewhere around there.
Somewhere around there.
Yeah, so what advice would you give him? And then when you're done answering that, what advice would you give the rest of the congregation moving forward?
Yeah, no, so I've had the chance since early May to be working alongside Zach. We've met together pretty much every Saturday. I have written a 20-page guide to every random thing that I could come up with, including like, here's how you erase the iPad when you have edited too many videos and the cache has filled up. So literally everything that I could think of was included in this 20-page guide. So we've had a lot of conversations, a lot of chance to train, and Zach and I have really hit it off. And I've also let Zach know that in my new role, one of my responsibilities is to interact with DREs in this region. So Zach has even more reason to reach out to me if he needs help, just as I often actually texted and called DJ during my first year. And so I let him know that that's okay. Please reach out to me. It's in fact something I can do as part of my job. But we've had great conversations, and I'm really confident that Zach understands our young people, Zach understands the interest of our young people and the interest of this community. So the advice that I would give, and I ran it by Zach this morning, was that I would keep the focus on our young people and their inclusion in our community. I think that this year has been really enriched with having more multi-generational experiences, which I would define as a service that just either has like a youth as one small part or just invites our youth to be part of the service and our young people as well. And the sense of youth is all of the ages. But then we also had these youth-led experiences this year, like our amazing Les Mis service. Special shout out to Opal and Penelope and Sadie for their ideas on that one. But our youth showed us this year that they could do amazing things and be an integral part of our community. And I think that it's important to keep that focus on our young people and their inclusion in this community. And I think that when we do that, we are a healthier community overall, because when our young people feel included, more strangers will feel included, more queer folks will feel included, more neurodiverse people will feel included. There's so much more ability to be welcome when we start with just welcoming our own young people and making sure that they feel included. And so as far as to the congregation, I think that I would, of course, keep this focus on young people, but I would also invite consideration of shared ministry, this idea that this work is all of us working together as a congregation. And I've seen it as people quickly volunteered to be on a committee to help hire Zach. We've seen people act quick in this congregation and come together to support. So I think understanding that ministry is the work that we all do together is really important. But in doing that, I think it's also important, in New York City, it's really easy to try and be everything to everyone. And sometimes we just need to focus. What is important to us as a community? What are the things that we're good at? What are the things that we're capable of that we can actually staff? So focus on, narrow the focus of the congregation. Don't just try to be everything to everyone. Figure out what's important for this community and what's important for this community to be, to do, and to create in the space that we're going to hold as a community.
Yeah, thank you for that. And before we conclude this portion of it, I wanted to ask you if you could say a little bit more about what you're going to be doing for the UUA. Although you actually already started back the beginning of May, right? So what's your new position like? What's your responsibility? And tell us more about what you're most excited about with this new position.
Yes, so I managed to secure a position with a even longer title than Director of Religious Education at the Fourth Universalist Society in the city of New York, which was already a mouthful. So now I am Youth and Emerging Adult Staff Team Member, because it's a 5-member team, at the Lifespan Faith Engagement Office at the UUA. So it's a pretty long title there.
You mean at the Unitarian Universalist Society?
It's true. But we love our acronyms at the UUA, so I can narrow it down. And yeah, we've actually, because we as a team, we have a 5-member team because there's 5 regions, and each of us is responsible for one region. Mine is the Central East region, which is this region. But as a team of 5, we decided that it's the Youth and Emerging Adult Ministry Staff, which is YAMS. So we just abbreviated it to YAMS. That YAMS is our official logo. So if you have any good, YAM like crochet, you can send one to me as a goodbye gift. So this group, we each have a region that we liaison with DREs. We help encourage events. We help consult about safety and registration systems. We basically are there to consult and think about how we can help support our religious education professionals across the region. In the Central East region, we actually have 201 congregations. I know that because I went through and counted on the list, because they don't have a nice Excel spreadsheet. So I just went the drop-down menu and counted every single one, because that's the type of person that I am. So that is one part of the role. But then the other big focus is we each have umbrellas. One of our team members is focused on rewriting our safety policy to also really include a big focus on inclusion. Another one is focusing on BIPOC youth and young adults. Another is focused on kind of supporting religious education professionals. And another is doing, I forget what is it. He's got many buckets. Eric Bliss, who's someone that you've actually worked alongside of before. I'm forgetting his bucket off the top of my head. And then my bucket is about cultivating youth and emerging adult leadership in our whole association. And how do we do that in a sustainable way that we aren't burning out our youth volunteers and our young adult volunteers? And how do we also help them make that bridging between their high school to college? And so that's all work that I will be doing. And I will also be involved with helping to plan the youth worship at GA next year. They heard about my Les Mis service plan, and they heard about the School of Love plan, and they're like, Ember, you are the person who actually likes planning worship, so we're going to let you be in charge of this next year. So that's really exciting too, that I'm going to have that special role of helping to foster our worship services at an association level.
Thank you. Well, I really appreciate the creativity that you've given, just the time I've worked with you, Ember, and the co-creation process. I've really enjoyed that. And also for the 4 years of wisdom. And those of you who know Ember know that she has a very wicked sense of humor, as they say. So thank you for sharing that with us. And we wish you the best as you continue to serve our larger faith. So let's Give Ember a token of our appreciation.
Well, welcome everybody today to Getting the Message, and I have a very special guest here with me. It is Ember Kelley, all the way from the Religious Education Office here at Fourth U. That's pretty awesome. Ember, thank you for joining us. And today at Getting the Message, we're going to ask you a bunch of RE questions. Are you ready?
It's like a rapid fire round, pretty much.
It is.
So
Ready?
like 5-second answers?
Yep.
Okay.
Here we go. First of all, what are you doing? Why are you leaving us? Where are you going? What's your job going to be?
Well, I'm leaving, they did hire you to be the new me.
Oh, that's right. So that's maybe good. No. Anyway.
Yes. So I'm leaving the program in good hands. I can say that. Zach and I have had a chance to spend the last few weeks talking, learning, modeling how things go on Sundays, figuring out how things go. Which, when I started, thanks to COVID, wasn't quite the same possibility. But so where am I headed? I am actually already started in the Lifespan Faith Engagement team at the UUA, or the Unitarian Universalist Association, for those who might not be familiar. So I'm at the association or denominational level, and I will be doing religious education work, thinking about how to cultivate sustainable youth leadership practices, but also I'll be interacting with the religious education professionals and teams and congregations in the Central East region, which makes up about 201 congregations. And I know that number because I actually went through a little drop-down menu and counted every single one of them.
Of course you did. Wait, does that mean I can email you questions after you leave?
That means that yes, in particular, I have the ability to, even more so, I regularly called my successor during my first year because it was COVID and there was just kind of a strange year. And so I had that ability to call, but you have even more of an ability to call because it is quite literally my job to be offering advice and wisdom and having conversation with DREs in this region. So
Nice. Well, I'm writing that down, making a note. So I'd be expecting your caller ID to say Fourth U a bunch. Is that okay?
I'll think about it.
Okay.
You can leave a voicemail at least, and I'll get back to you in a few business days.
All right. So let's switch to your RE journey, your religious education journey here at Fourth U. Can you give us a 5-second summary?
I see that you've done the reverse Cotton Eye Joe. You've
Correct.
done where did you go, where did you come from, instead of
Yes.
where did you come from, where did you go.
There we go. Mhm. You want to sing that together for the kids?
No, I'm okay.
Okay.
We resist the singing here. Besides maybe the Les Mis service, I did a little bit of singing in the background there.
Oh.
But so I came from evangelicalism. I grew up in that tradition, and
Me too.
yeah, wanted to be a minister. I started on the path of becoming a minister in the Christian Reformed Church before I joined the Catholic Church. Briefly thought about becoming a priest, which is an interesting parallel universe out there somewhere. But then decided that an openly antagonistic to LGBT people religious community on a political, national, international level just didn't quite sit right with me. And then I headed to the ELCA and had a little trouble with their discernment process, some mild transphobia, and ended up in the UCC, which is where I spent a considerable amount of time. I worked as a youth director at a congregation. But then I just was, after I graduated, I wasn't feeling quite ready to head to full-time ministry, so I went and taught abroad in Vietnam doing TESOL, which Fourth U has a surprising connection to like TESOL teachers. I feel like I'll just ever so randomly someone will be like, oh yeah, I teach English for TESOL, and I'm like, oh, hey, it's strange how this place attracts us all. So maybe someone can write a thesis about how that happens. But I'm really thankful for that experience because when you leave seminary, you're very pretentious, which I mean is just always the case with me. But in the case of that, you often are talking like the big words, and you're talking about these concepts that you've become particularly passionate about for 3 years, but that might not make sense to your average person. And so, going to Vietnam, working with folks who could barely, these kids who could barely speak any English, and I was just really having to communicate with them on a basic level. And then making friends, and we had to, talk cross-culturally and make sure to simplify concepts. It really helped me to be like, oh, your average person doesn't want like a 30-minute lecture about the incarnation. Maybe like a brief summary might be interesting to them, but these religious concepts need to be explained in simpler ways, and that I think has really benefited me for both my preaching, but also for teaching in RE as well, to think about what is the core of what I'm really trying to get at. So I was really thankful for that experience before I headed into full-time religious education work.
Okay. So speaking of RE,
it stands for religious education.
Religious education.
You're welcome.
What is your favorite moment out of all your 4 years here at Fourth U as the religious education director?
I think it has to be, and it was a Sunday that you were here for,
Mm-hmm.
it has to be my Les Mis themed youth service.
Ah, yes. Awesome.
That was truly the magnum opus of my time here, that I felt like it was me running on all cylinders, that I was working with the youth, they were giving me feedback, they were excited, and like we planned this whole thing together, but it was also just a great service, and then it went like flawlessly, and thanks to an amazing team like Rob and other folks, like it just came together so well that I was like, yeah, this is literally the best thing I could possibly do. So it's my favorite memory.
I've never seen a battle scene in a church before, but it was awesome.
Yeah, basically a snowball fight in church without snowballs.
What was your craziest moment? And I'm wondering if it's the same moment.
I mean, on some level, yes. And same with the the other youth-led service this year, which was the like magical school centered around our new UU values. Also just like absolutely ridiculous. We had Sadie like rolling around on the floor while pretending to be a stranger who was confused about this world, just strange moments. But at the same time, the absurdity of starting my time here in the middle of moving, when I accepted the job offer, it was May of 2020. This was the time that quite literally New York City was on the face of every newspaper, like as the center of COVID-19. And so that is perhaps the most absurd thing, is that I accepted a job offer to head to the middle of the epidemic. And so maybe that is equally as ridiculous.
Okay. Well, thank you for doing that, though.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool. The kids love you, which is awesome. Speaking of that, what is your most heartfelt moment that you can remember?
Heartfelt moment? I don't know that a particular one stands out. I just think of the lots of times that, whether in lower L, upper L, youth group, that I've let myself be distracted to just have true, honest, deep conversation with our young people and gotten to know them and gotten to feel comfortable with them. I know that one of our lower L students, who's fairly young, and it was their first year in RE this year, like in the lower L RE instead of the nursery, that they, when asked like what they enjoyed about coming to church, they're like, I get to see Ember. And so I had made that connection by taking the time to just get to know. And so I think that that's been the most meaningful thing to me, is the chance to like get to know these kids deeply.
Awesome. Here's a good question. Not just because I came up with it. If you could give one piece of advice to future RE volunteers, what would it be?
Volunteer.
Okay.
There you go. Pretty easy.
Just volunteer.
No, care about the kids, and that's something I shared in my the message today as well.
Great.
But care about the kids.
Speaking of the kids, what's the one big thought that you would like every student at Fourth U to remember after you're gone?
See, here I thought you were going to surprise me, be like, this question is, who is your favorite student?
Oh, no.
They all are.
No, exactly.
What was the question again? I got distracted thinking of my funny joke.
What's your one big thought you want every student to take away from your time?
In the same vein as thinking, just, focus on the kids from the volunteer perspective, is I hope that as I leave, that the kids understand that they aren't just an accessory to the life of this congregation, but that this congregation is theirs as much as it is the adults. And I hope that they know that, and I hope that they know that they matter and that they have meaning in the wider UUA. So even while I will be connecting with the DREs and other religious education professionals, in my position, I'm hoping to connect with youth to let them know that they are equally as valid as part of our association in making decisions and thinking about things.
Okay. 2 more questions. I promise. Only 2.
Only 2.
If you
Why
could
not
say,
5?
if you could say anything to the new DRE, if they were here, what would it be?
Wow, conveniently, he's
Oh,
right here.
I'm right here. So Ember,
Good luck.
well,
No,
thank you. What's your one big piece of advice?
To try things out. I think New York City is a really unique place, and it's a really unique place to do religious education. And because of that, I think we have the ability to be a place where we can try new ideas and try and be on the cutting edge of seeing what could be possible for how we imagine religious education in our communities.
Okay. Final question, probably the most important question of the entire interview. So let's
Does
all
it have to do with Taylor Swift?
all lean in. We're gonna lean in. What is your favorite Taylor Swift song
I knew it.
of all time? Like if you were stranded on a desert island.
I'd throw out all the records because the capitalism is out of control. You see, Zach, we may both be Swifties. I have the markings to prove it.
If there was no capitalism, what would your favorite Taylor Swift song be?
See, I mean, Zach knows. Zach added this question knowing full well that Taylor Swift and I are on a breakup right now.
I'm trying to rekindle the flame.
Rekindle the flame. I see. I appreciate it. You're like the Swiftie therapist. No, I named my sermon after Mirrorball, and that's definitely up there in my tops. But I think that out of all the albums, if I had to pick a number 1, man, it's just Coney Island is really high up there, and as is Hoax. That's a song off of Evermore and a song off of Folklore.
All right.
If it's moody and depressing, that's my favorite Taylor Swift songs.
All right, folks, you heard it here first. Ember's favorite songs, moody and depressing, Taylor Swift or not. Yes?
Actually, I'm largely very pop.
Oh, gosh. So much more to get to know about you, Ember.
So much. Yeah.
We're gonna get to know each other more on these many phone calls I'm gonna be making to you in my chaotic state here at Fourth U.
It's true.
Okay?
I hope so.
All right. Thanks for joining us, everyone, and we will see you next week.
Goodbye from my last getting the message.